Never dreamed I'd be walking out to that song. That was that was amazing. Thank y'all for having me here. I loved Brad's description yesterday. You guys really are the cream filling in a Twinkie of a world. So that needs to be the new hashtag, WDS cream filling. Anyway, I have an apology to make. They asked me to speak for 35 minutes, and I spent the last 3 weeks literally illustrating my story. And when it was all done, it was only 20 minutes. So I'm cutting a little short, but I think y'all will dig it. It's a bit of a crazy presentation. So with that being said, let's do this. My name is Jeremy, and this is my story. I was born in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and grew up in a suburb called Hendersonville. Hendersonville was originally known for Johnny Cash, but now Taylor Swift. I love you, Taylor. Growing up, I was never smart. I couldn't pay attention for more than 3 minutes. I was a terrible listener, and I made bad grades. I was quiet, shy, and really just average. I wasn't a great athlete, imagine that, or student, but not bad either, just average. I always remember telling my mom and dad, I can't do this. I took piano lessons, same thing, I can't do this. Everything I did ended with those words, I can't do this. That's when my dad started reprogramming my brain with a Bible verse. With one simple sentence, it was, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He said this for years, he said it over and over again. And then in 7th grade, I discovered I could draw. So I started taking art more seriously. Something in me came alive when I would create. I was failing miserably at all the mandatory academics, but I came to life in the optional arts. Heck, I was even officially tested with some fancy aptitude test my senior year. Here were my official results. Inductive reasoning, 15 out of 100. Analytical reasoning, 5 out of 100. Structural visualization, 15 out of 100. Observation, 15 out of 100. English vocabulary, 5 out of 100. Perfect, 5. It's now been confirmed that I'm a complete and total moron. But when it came time for college, all I knew was art. I could make pretty things, and that was about it. So I wanted to be a painter for the rest of my life. Well, my parents made a call that was very wise, and in hindsight, way ahead of their time. My mom said, you should look into, it's going to be tough to make a living as a painter, look into computers instead. Whoa, here comes those 2 words again. I can't. Computers are for smart people. Computers are for people who can focus. I'm not smart, so therefore I can't. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, they said once again. So off to the races, I went ahead and reluctantly jumped in. And guess what happened? I fell in love. Turns out that Photoshop is the coolest tool on the planet. And it's not just for smart people, it's for anybody, and it was definitely for me. So I studied design in college, and I got my first job at a high-end ad agency. And after a year, my boss fired me, and not only did he fire me, but he kindly suggested that I find another career altogether. But see, he was too late. I had already started believing that I could do anything that I wanted to do. Thankfully, I ignored him and worked for a couple more ad agencies. And then I finally realized that the ad agency world was boring for me, and I was designing websites for air conditioning companies, and it's impossible to make an AC unit look sexy. So at the time, I had a few friends doing music. I knew how to design album covers and websites, so why not work for them instead? So after having the idea, I quit my comfortable, sexy job the next day. Didn't think, just jumped. I called the company Pixel Grazer and it blew up. Album covers, websites, merch, we did it all. But one day a friend said, hey, you should buy a digital camera. Back to square one. I can't. There's no way. Photography is for very smart people. I took one photography class in college and made a D. My professor seemed to hate me, so I swore off photography for life, and I literally told people I'd never become a photographer. You can do all things, I heard once again. So what did I do? I went to the bookstore and bought a book called Digital Photography for Dummies. D. True freaking story. So I learned about these scary things called f-stop, shutter speeds, ISO, white balance, and more. And to my utter surprise, I actually understood it all, so maybe I wasn't an idiot after all. So I went ahead and bought a 3-megapixel camera and was ready to take over the world. I took photos of everything, textures around the house, window light, landscapes, you name it. Next thing you know, I was shooting these musician friends of mine, and I was not awful. It turns out that the same principles that apply to design also apply to photography. Color, composition, lines, balance. Finally told all my design clients, hey, I'm taking pictures now too. So they started hiring me big labels, paying me big dollars to shoot musicians with a 3-megapixel camera. No lie. Photography took off for me, and it's all I wanted to do. So I told my business partner and all my clients, hey, I'm just a photographer now. No more design, and it worked. I started landing a lot of gigs, and one of those jobs was for a record label, and I ended up beating a well-known Hollywood agent and her roster of celebrity photographers. So she called me and she said, hey, I'd love to represent you. Your work is amazing. You know how to light big sets, right? And I was all like, totally. But I had never lit a big set before. But hey, I can do anything, so why not? So we signed a deal, and within weeks I was shooting for networks like E! And Fox, and then I got to shoot an indie artist named Sting. And the immediate success was shocking, and I went from amateur photographer to celebrity photographer in just a few months. Since then, I've now photographed a long list of celebrities. The Kardashians, Ryan Seacrest, Taylor Swift, Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Gwyneth Paltrow, and many, many more. I've now published 4 books, 4 photography books. I went on tour with Britney Spears as her tour photographer. Long story. My photos have now been published in Sports Illustrated, ESPN, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, and every other magazine I could dream of. I now have over 1 million followers across all the social networks. And I founded an iOS app called OKDOTHIS. It's now in the App Store. I'm now a paid advisor to technology companies, and I'm sponsored by Canon, the very company that I was extremely intimidated by in college. And to top it all off, last year, Huffington Post named me the most influential photographer on the internet. Thank you. But in the end, who cares? Was being a photography rock star really my goal? I knew that wasn't the goal. Being cool and being liked wasn't and isn't my purpose for being on this planet. So what was it? I started to wonder how I could use what was in my hands, my camera, to help others. And that led me to the idea of giving photos away to people in need. So I gathered together a few photography friends, and we spent the day at a gym giving photos away to people in need. I put a simple video of the day on Facebook and various blogs, and the next day people responded with, hey, I want to be a part of this if you do it again. That's when I had the thought, what if this was a global event where photographers did this all over the world? No way, I can't. Global? You see, that idea that my parents instilled in me not only helped me overcome my challenges and insecurities, it blew off my limitations and opened up the world to me. So why not start a global movement? 9 months later, I put the idea out there, and word spread crazy fast. So what happened that December of 2009? 3,400 photographers and 5,000 volunteers responded, and we gave away 41,000 portraits in 543 locations in 42 countries around the world. Since then, the numbers now stand at a combined 50,000 people that have given away nearly 300,000 portraits in over 62 countries in every American state. But it's not the numbers that count for us, it's the stories. Dignity, beauty, and value, a sense of self-worth. These are the things being given away that material possessions can't really deliver. We've seen women get their hair and makeup done for the very first time. We've seen grown men have their first pictures taken out of their jail mugshots. We've restored photos after natural disasters. We've seen kids see themselves for the very first time in third world countries. We've seen tears after people realize they can get a job with their new headshots. We've had photographers say this is the greatest thing I've ever done with my camera. And we've had photography competitors become photography community after serving together. So Help Portrait was a crazy simple idea that has now reached around the world. And it made me realize that a simple idea and a camera could go a long way. So how else could I help? When the earthquake struck Haiti, I was dumbfounded, and I couldn't believe my eyes. But more importantly, I couldn't believe what the media was saying about it. They just kept mentioning how many buildings had fallen and how many people died. It was all statistics. But what about the people? What about their stories, I wondered. So as I sat on my couch watching CNN, I wondered, what if these people could tweet? What would they tell the world right now? But most of them couldn't tweet at the time, so what if I went down there myself and gave them a microphone instead? A microphone in the form of a photograph. I started tweeting and found a ride down to Haiti on a military plane just a few days after the earthquake. And I met some local Haitians to crash with via Twitter. So we went around asking people what they had to tell the world. The results were staggering, heart-wrenching, beautiful, and inspiring. This man said, "My chopped leg is not the problem. The lack of government is the problem." I love her simple statement. She just said, "Oh, the things I've seen." This man said, "The earth may shake, but Haiti remains in my heart." This kid simply said, "I wish I could turn back time." This woman said, "God, please show me the path of hope." Somebody had hope. We heard there was a wedding going on, and the thought was crazy. There were still aftershocks. There were dead bodies laying everywhere. Who would get married amongst all this? We found the wedding, and we asked them what they had to say to the world. Their response? Love conquers all. When the project was done, I didn't just want to share them on a blog post. I knew the project would get lost on a simple blog. People would forget it. So instead, I released one image a day for 70 days, and because of the slow release, the UN eventually caught wind of the project. They printed the images for a monumental meeting with many world leaders who were going to be making a pledge towards rebuilding Haiti. And after walking through the images before the meeting, they ended up pledging $10 billion that day to rebuild Haiti. I have no clue how much those photos meant to them, but it didn't matter. The voices were heard. That project was so fulfilling that I decided to do it again, but this time I thought it'd be fascinating to shoot portraits of Rwandan genocide survivors standing with the people that killed their families and whom they've now forgiven. I called it Voices of Reconciliation. The man on the right killed the man on the left's family and killed them right there where they're standing. So we went back to the scene of the crime. They've now forgiven each other. They're friends. They wrote on their arms, "Love is the weapon that kills all evil." These guys were childhood best friends. The guy on the left got caught up in the opposing tribe. They were trying to find his best friend to kill him. They couldn't find him, so they stole all his possessions. They burned down his farm. And after he found out about that his friend did this, they went through the reconciliation program over time. He forgave him. And so now I said, so what do you have to say? And they wrote on that tree, still best friends. Could you imagine? This woman forgave her husband, now husband, for all the people he had killed during the genocide. He was in the opposing tribe, but she chose to forgive him. And it's very rare for opposing tribes to marry these days. But they wrote on this leaf, we are all Rwandan. Basically, let's move forward and forget the past. The man on the left, his father killed the man on the right's family, and that man witnessed it all happening in the water right behind where they're standing. And so the man on the left feared meeting him because of what his father had done. And so they finally met through the reconciliation program. The man forgave him, and they wrote on this rock, forgiveness releases fear. This project ended up landing on CNN. It was the leading worldwide headline discussing the power of forgiveness. And it also helped spread awareness for the As We Forgive initiative, founded by Laura Waters Henson. So a couple years later, I decided to head back to Uganda with my friends at Exile International. But this time I wanted to collaborate with children, specifically former child soldiers who'd been abducted by Joseph Kony on the LRA. As a form of art therapy, we worked together to tell their stories. We interviewed them, I took portraits of them, and I had them draw the pains of their past and the dreams of their future. I even taught them how to draw these stories in Photoshop. The stories weighed like concrete blocks on our team. One girl was forced to participate in the murder of her own mother. She was 7 at the time. The other stories were too graphic, too horrific, and even too evil to recount here today. But all of them had glimpses of hope and redemption woven throughout. And I wanted to help show that. So I took their handkerchief art, I took their Photoshop art, I took their stories, and I took their portraits. And I combined them all together to make these abstract mixed media pieces. We've been selling prints of these ever since to raise more money for their continued art therapy through Exile International. Speaking of kids, my wife Shannon and I have 2 biological children, and we just adopted 2 more children from Haiti. And you know what I tell them every chance I get? Same verse, you can do anything. Adoption is easily one of the hardest things we've ever done as a family. My 2 older children have welcomed their new siblings with open arms. And our new children are overcoming language and cultural barriers while learning to embrace life in an entirely new environment. Every day they are all reminding us what it means to live out the idea that it took me so long to embrace. Nothing is more important to me than my family. I not only have 2 supportive parents, but I have 2 older brothers as well. In January 2014, my brothers and I all took our daughters to a daddy-daughter dance. My older brother, Mike, also a photographer, took just 1 photo of me and my daughter that night. And I took just 1 photo of him and his daughter as well. Fast forward a few weeks, I was speaking at a conference in Vegas when I got a 911 text from my dad. Mike had suddenly passed away from a heart attack. gone in an instant, and just, you never know. That daddy-daughter dance was the last time I photographed him and one of the last times I saw him. In the weeks that followed, I began asking, what if I died today? What about my kids? What if I could teach them everything I've learned in life just in case? Well, I did just that. I've spent the last 9 months filming 120 videos of everything I know on a platform called cuniversity.com. Photoshop, lighting, marriage, work balance, getting started, lenses, cameras, all that good stuff. Could you imagine learning from your grandparents and great-grandparents? What if they could have documented everything they know, everything they learned in life? I'm teaching everything I know to hopefully inspire you to see your own potential in the world, to dream again, to hope again, and to try again. Think about that little shy 5th percentile me from Hendersonville, Tennessee. And I'm now teaching the world about the very things in life that I couldn't do. If I can do all this, then just imagine what you can do. What have you been too afraid to try? What voices have kept you from reaching your potential? If you're alive, if you're breathing, we need you. We need your vision. You can do anything. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you. Awesome.